We'll continue in Bushel Up, looking at our some of our micronutrients. We're looking at iron today. This is where the guys that invented the periodic table kind of threw us a curveball. They chose Fe to represent iron. I don't know, IR wasn't taken yet, but you know, I wasn't alive back then to help them with that choice. So when we look at iron, we're looking at a divalent, trivalent cation, which means it does bind to the soil. Highly immobile in the soil. The reason we sometimes are concerned about iron is it's part of the formation of chloroplasts. It's kind of primary element in those chloroplasts. So when we see good iron, we get the nice big green chloroplasts. When we lack iron, those chloroplasts are smaller. So what's that mean? When we see a deficiency, typically you'll see a pale or yellow and kind of that interveinal. Not the whole plant isn't necessarily yellow. The veins and stuff are green, but you'll start seeing interveinal chlorosis is what we refer to it a lot as. And that's where we get the iron chlorosis. And where we see that is, most soils have plenty of iron. That's why we don't typically soil test for it. But when you run into that, iron is regulated by your pH. And if you've ever seen the pH chart with the nutrient availability, you'll notice iron, once we go into a 7+ pH environment, it gets very unavailable. And so we see that in our high pH soils, especially through the Platte River Valley, where we get into alkali pockets, high excess lime. That's where we have a lot of our problems. We can also see some problems on really light sands, but typically it's the high pH soils that we worry about. We can also see some iron deficiencies if we get an imbalance. So, a good way to test for that is look at tissue tests, see if, tissue test if your iron's out of whack. It could be a fact of there's some other nutrients that are a little overloading that, and we just have a balance issue. Foliar treatments do work, but we really say the sooner the better. So if you notice some chlorosis in corn or soybeans, it usually is more predominant in soybeans, but we see it also in corn on some of those higher pH soils, is to get that foliar iron out there right away. The longer that plant struggles, the further we set it back, the harder it is to snap it out of it. If we can get to that treatment right away, that'll work. Soil applied iron, I've played with a lot of different forms, and sometimes we get results, but the amount of iron it takes, if you have a pH issue, to try and overcome that, usually it's pretty hard to address that with soil applied iron. So we focus a lot on the foliar treatments. So hope that helps give you a little bit of background on iron, and we'll continue these as we move forward.